Cool.
So I usually start these by asking how many of my typing sessions have you seen before?
So I think I've probably seen at least 10,
All right.
not necessarily all the way through.
Okay. And do you feel like when you're watching them, you have a pretty good idea of what I'm testing for when I'm asking certain things?
Only on certain ones. Like I think I know the like when you're doing the SI or the TI or the NE, but some of the other ones I'm not so sure.
Okay, cool. Um, well, let's start with kind of a standard SI autobiographical memory kind of a test. Tell me, if you can, about what time of day is it where you are?
It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay, so can you tell me about the events of today, starting from when you woke up until this?
Sure. Okay. So I woke up this morning about probably about 6 o'clock, and my wife had put our baby in the bed, so the baby was in the bed next to me, and she woke up, and that's what woke me up. So I picked her up, took her into the kitchen where my wife was, and my wife was cooking pancakes for our son. He wasn't up yet.
And you said,
So I
"Here,
took,
you left this in bed."
yeah, yeah. What the hell's this? um, yeah, so I took our daughter into the front room, put her on like a play mat, and kind of probably like played with her for a bit, with toys and stuff, and probably gave her some milk. Um, then my son came in, woke up about 7 o'clock. So he came in. I got him sat down, um, got him a drink, and then went and got him his breakfast. Then I got my bag ready to go to the gym. So I packed my bag up. Um, then went out, walked to the tube subway. Got that to the gym. Um, I trained in the gym for about an hour. Then left. Then I got a different. I went a different route home, so I went on an overground train
Okay,
home.
all right, that's good.
Yeah.
So, um, you definitely are SI in the front stack or possibly fifth.
Okay.
You're not six, seven, or eight for sure. We can
Yeah.
eliminate
Okay.
those. Um, can you tell me about any projects you have ongoing that aren't work for a job projects?
Yeah. So I haven't had a lot of free time recently, but I have done a few creative writing courses. So I did one which was short stories writing, and one which was more general creative writing. So I wrote a few stories for that course, and then I've been trying to kind of carry on writing stories since then. So that's something I do. Um, I sometimes I've made a couple of YouTube, like, well, not I haven't actually put them on YouTube, but I've made a few videos using like Final Cut Pro, of sort of boxing highlights. So you kind of like you do like a career highlight of a particular boxer.
I know what you're talking about. I'm your
Yeah,
consumer base. I watch those
is it?
videos.
Yeah, no, I don't know why they're so addictive to watch, but I've seen so many of them. So that's something I want to start doing again as well. The reason I've not been doing that sort of stuff is just because our daughter's like 7 months old now. So last 7 months or so, it's just been real busy.
Your nipples are pretty sore at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Although she never breastfed, so she
Well,
only bottle fed. So our
okay.
nipples are fine.
All right. And so is this moment in your life, which you might call uh, television sitcom period of life? You're
Right. Yeah.
with
Yeah.
your spouse. You have kids that are still in school.
Yeah. Well,
Was this is
yeah.
this the result of a planned attack on life, or did it just sort of happen?
Just happened. I've never really had a vision of what I wanted to do in the future. I wasn't like I wasn't someone who was like, I definitely want to have kids. I was like, if I meet someone and they want to have kids, I'll have kids. If not, I won't. And like right now, I don't have like a plan for the next sort of 5 or 10 years, particularly.
Okay. You just figure that the growing of children requires merely that you acknowledge, merely that you manifest the passage of time. You don't have to plan for them to grow; they just grow on their own, and
Yeah,
you
totally.
just let time pass. Okay, so tell me about your creative process when you decide you're going to write a story. Do you start with a concept, and what kind of concept is it?
Yeah, so there's always that question of, do you start with the plot or do you start with a character, or a kind of situation? And the kind of stuff I like reading is usually quite character based.
Uh-huh.
But I have found that from writing from character is more difficult than if you've actually got a plot in mind. So what I would quite often do, quite often I get like a particular like setting or thing which is interesting to me, and I might start writing a story, but they quite often kind of fizzle out. But usually, if you can find like a situation which is interesting, like a kind of a problem that someone could have, um, that's usually interesting to me. And it doesn't necessarily need to be a problem that has the whole story in there. One time I sat down, and this was one of the first stories I ever wrote, and it said your character's got to have a problem to solve. And I just said, okay, so there's a guy who has a toothache, and he needs to get money to go to the dentist. And then I just kind of combined that with a couple of other things I'd seen, like films and stuff I'd seen recently, and that actually got to an idea, but it kind of started off from quite a random place.
Okay. So, I was watching Netflix yesterday, and the show started with a family of people, a daughter, a father, and a mother, and they were running and gathering things that looks, like we're leaving the house and we're not coming back, and shit's going down, helicopters flying overhead, and but then as it started, you couldn't tell at any point for a stretch of time what they were running from.
Yeah.
So I kind of hypothetically paused it, not really, but as it proceeded to reveal what it was about, I started thinking about how do you create momentum in a story while by virtue of action moving forward versus how do you create and sustain momentum by being surprising. So
Mm.
it's like that's a fairly common trope, right? To start a story with people in the middle of running away from something.
Yeah.
But if it's going to be zombies, then your story's boring.
Yeah.
It was zombies. I
Was
like,
it? Like,
oh, come on, guys. Surprise me a little bit,
mm.
Anyway, okay, so did your character, in the example you gave me, did the character
Yeah.
solve the problem successfully?
No, he didn't. It basically became the. So I'd seen this was a long while ago, but I'd seen the Shawshank Redemption,
Mm-hmm.
and at the start of the Shawshank Redemption, he's getting sent to prison, and it feels like there's a totally watertight case against him. And I thought that was a really interesting thing, but obviously it turns out he's not guilty. And I thought that was an interesting thing about how like circumstances could um, put you in a position where it seemed you were guilty when actually you weren't. So the way the story worked was it started off with the guy having a recollection, and he's just looking out of his window, and then he starts telling a story about the same time 10 years ago. And basically, without doing a whole story, he meets a guy in a bar and he helps the guy out because the guy's going to get beaten up. And then later on in the story, it turns out that the reason he's going to get beaten up was that he'd stolen the other person's wallet. But the character I knew didn't know that at the time. And then he kind of confronts the guy about it. They have a fight. The other guy runs off and brushes past him, and he realizes that he's stolen his wallet. So then he walks home. But the next day, he's arrested because the guy robbed a convenience store, a liquor store, shot the clerk, and then threw his wallet down at the scene. And then when they checked his bank records and stuff, it showed that he was having money trouble, which, like I said, I set it up at the start with the toothache. He didn't have a chance. He couldn't go to the dentist. And then I closed with the fact that the window he was looking out of at the start of the story was his prison cell. window, so it's kind of like a circular story. So the actual problem of the kind of him needing money was not solved.
And is the last line of the story. On the plus side, they did pull that tooth out here in prison.
Yeah, yeah, free dental care. No, it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Okay, so when you consume media, what kind of media are you most likely to consume for entertainment? Is it like novels or watching TV or movies or what?
So, if I'm reading fiction, like I say, it'll be short stories. I don't know why I just prefer short stories to novels. I think it's like if you find a really good collection of short stories by an author you like, it's like finding a good album or something, and you can kind of just yeah, and there's a lot of variation there. As I sort of said earlier, I don't get a lot of time to read while the kids are little, so the thing I probably consume the most is podcasts, because the kids have always got whatever, cartoons or whatever on TV. So I listen to a few different podcasts and a lot of YouTube videos as well. But yeah, there's kind of quite probably mostly podcasts and then books when I get the time.
Okay, so do you have any like favorite writer or writers that have filled that role of a good album for you?
Yeah, so I like Richard Yates, who wrote Revolutionary Road, but he's got quite a few collections of short stories. Um, then there was a guy I read recently called Ron Hansen, who has a collection of stories called Nebraska, and that was they're all kind of set in sort of like Middle America in the sort of 60s and 70s. Um, Graham Greene has got some really good collections of short stories. Um, on the course that I did, there was we did a lot of Raymond Carver stories, as I think everyone does if they do a short story course. And
I mean, at least
yeah,
they demonstrate like this is how minimalist you can get, I guess.
yeah, I think so. I think also like because you can't really do well, you can, but because you're not quite often aren't doing like a full arc of a story like you would with a novel. You're just doing like a snapshot of a character. They tend to have good characters for the story to work. Um, and they're also like quite interestingly like quite open ended. A lot of the time, like you get to the end of a short story quite often, and you feel like there's a point that they haven't really spelt out, and it's kind of left for you to sort of fill in the gaps.
Um, you ever read any stories by Saki?
No,
Saki.
no, I
His
haven't.
name's also H. Monroe. He wrote under the pen name Saki, but he's my favorite short story writer, uh, and I also like Sherwood Anderson. Sherwood Anderson is a brilliant short story writer too, and I really like the form as well. I'm
Yeah,
a fan of short stories because when they're done right, they're these perfect little gems of
yeah,
narrative wapa.
yeah. And you can usually read them in one sitting, which I quite like.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, okay, cool. So, do you what do you do when you complete a short story? Are you just thinking, okay, well, I'm taking advantage of this academic setting so that my fellow like workshoppy things, or are you trying to send it to like the New Yorker to be published, or what?
So on the courses that I did, yeah, you kind of put it into for them to be like workshopped with everyone, and everyone will kind of comment on them. Um, since then, I haven't done anything really with the ones that I have finished because I haven't finished loads of them. I kind of have quite a few unfinished ones. I think when you do a course, it's good. The deadline's quite useful to actually force you to finish it. Um, I think once I get more time to write again, I might try and see if there's like any competitions or whatever you can enter, just to again have like a deadline to
Do,
actually kind of force you to
do
finish it.
you trust your instincts about the quality of what you've completed?
To an extent, but no, I do like feedback because just partly from doing those courses, the guy who taught them was in a good way, like quite brutal with his feedback, because he obviously has to spend a lot of his time reading really bad stories. And I realise now how bad some of the early stuff I did was. So yeah, I kind of want a bit of feedback from someone.
He comes back after the first batch of stories we do, and he's like, "Well, that was fucking miserable. Reading
Yeah,
through this stack of garbage."
yeah. Yeah, it was good because he would do it basically. It was on. We did the course was online. It was years ago, but they did it online. So he would like do track changes, and so you get to see the comments he'd made on everyone's stories, and some of the comments he put on there, you could tell he was just barely keeping a lid on his rage of why the fuck do I have to read these terrible stories.
Yeah, but you know what? It's hard for even excellent writers to successfully pull off a good short story. And there are a
Yeah,
lot of ones that might conceptually seem promising that end up just deflating like a balloon with a hole in it, you know?
yeah.
Okay, well, let's see about TE stuff. Can you talk to me about walk walk me through mowing the lawn?
Okay, so you get the lawnmower, you plug it into a power source, um, you mow the lawn, and then you empty the grass at the end of it.
Then you sell your electric lawnmower and get
Yeah,
a gasoline powered one.
yeah. I don't, it doesn't seem to be a thing in the UK. But we don't have like big lawns mostly in the UK, so I guess everyone just has like
Oh,
crappy big ones.
huh. I see. I had to mow my lawn front and back every week when I was a kid,
Mm.
and it was either hand push lawnmower or gas powered mower.
Right.
I don't think they even came out with electric mowers until not that long ago. So
Yeah.
maybe in other countries though they never came out with gas mowers. They just came out with electric mowers. I don't know.
Yeah.
These are the
Yeah.
mysteries that we just don't get to know
Exactly.
about. Okay, so do you think you're a good person to ask to fix something if something breaks around the house?
Um, I'm not that person who automatically knows how to fix stuff. If something breaks around the house, usually Google how to fix it
Do you have
and have a go.
tools?
Yeah, I've got tools
Do you have Allen wrenches?
like Allen keys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you have regular wrenches?
I've probably got one.
Do you have both Phillips head and flathead screwdrivers?
Yeah.
Do you have any power tools?
I've got a power drill, and I have got a like a power like sander. But I think I kind of just got that off my dad. I think he just gave it to me because he had two or something, and I've never really used it.
Do you have power tools that you'd like to acquire at some point, but now's not quite the time?
Well, like they look like fun. Um, Not that I can think of. No, I mean I can't think of what I'd need like a power saw for or anything like that.
Not even an angle grinder?
What did that angle was angle grinder do?
It's got like a really rough stone circle so you can
Right.
grind shit.
Yeah.
It spins around and you got a hold here and a thing here and you can push it at things and grind them.
Okay. Yeah. No, that sounds cool. Yeah. No, I would use that. I mean, I'm not. I'm kind of like learning how to do DIY. I haven't done a lot of it before, but now I've got our own house and stuff.
In general, the correct answer to all of DIY things is don't DIY. Get somebody
Yeah.
else to DIFY to do it for you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. I would.
probably it's not worth the time. If only if you like doing shit like that should you do it.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. I mean, I wouldn't like anything I thought that could go particularly wrong, like electrics or plumbing or whatever. I'd definitely get an expert in. If something fairly simple broke, probably have a go at fixing it just because it's quite satisfying.
Have you ever hurt yourself enough, injured yourself enough that you needed to at least shut down what you're doing for a day or two to deal with the injury or hurt? And what were you doing when you hurt yourself?
So anything not connected to tools.
Not doesn't have to be connected to tools. I mean, we're segueing into general hurting of self.
Yeah, so I broke my nose boxing when I was younger. Um,
Didn't somebody else break your nose?
yeah, someone else broke it for me. Yeah. Although to be fair, I didn't have to when you break your nose, you don't have to necessarily shut down everything you're doing. It's just
No, that counts as an injury. That definitely
yeah.
counts. Okay, that rises above scrapes and bruises for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you boxed. How long did you box for?
So I don't want to overplay it because I wasn't like a competitive amateur boxer or anything like that. I just I first did it when I was about 18 or 19 for a couple of years, and then I picked up again when I was about 25, 26, no 26, and then I've kind of carried on doing it since I'm 38 now. So I just kind of trained and used to do sparring.
Is it for exercise mostly?
Yeah, for exercise, and also I don't really know why, but I just got into boxing when I was younger. Just got interested in it as a sport, and
It is a great sport. It's a very
yeah,
interesting sport. It's a lot more interesting ultimately than MMA.
yeah,
For a stretch of time, I started kind of watching MMA, but ultimately, I'm always more interested in boxing than I am in MMA
mm,
matches because boxing's got more ebbs and flows to it. It's
yeah,
like you can see, you can make better predictions because there are fewer wild card factors.
yeah,
And it's like you can
yeah,
tell that this guy's going to punch himself out, and you're just waiting to see if
yeah,
he hits him hard enough to knock him out, or if he gets tired and then the tide turns, and it's like, okay,
yeah.
now he's battling, he's fighting himself now.
Yeah, I think there's the fact that there's like only a finite number of punches in boxing that you can use, so that kind of always makes it interesting. And then also because you just get lots of different body shapes and sizes and stuff. I think the most interesting boxing matches are where one guy's got to do one thing, and the other guy's got to do something else to win, and it's who can impose that on the other one that makes it interesting. But I think also for me it was like the history of it as well. I think like kind of the learning about the boxers from the past and stuff. For some reason, I find that uh, I feel like people are more interested in the history with boxing than they are with other sports.
When I get in the ring, what I have to do is hurry up and get out of the ring and say, "Help! Somebody put these boxing gloves on me." Anyway,
Yeah,
can you tell me about your relationship with task completion? Do you have a list of things you're supposed to get done? Do you keep it in your head? Or are you pretty
yeah.
good about following through? Do you procrastinate? Things like that.
So I'm quite good at getting stuff done on a limited scale. If it's like something where I just need to rely on myself to do it, I can do it. I'm not great when it involves other people and like organization and like having to like use a lot of initiative and be proactive. That stresses me out, and I kind of leave that stuff to the last minute. I do for work. I will make a to-do list in the morning, but I've only learned I've got to do that because my natural tendency is to be a bit chaotic and just jump from thing to thing. And if I don't make a list, I don't know where I am with anything.
Okay. So when you get out of bed in the morning, do you do this thing where you go, all right, I've got this chunk of time occupied by things on the schedule,
Yeah.
and then I've got this chunk of time that's occupied by things on the schedule. Now, there's this between time. How do you deal with that in the morning? Do you not think about what you're going to do then? You just note it as between time? Or do you
Yeah.
think about how you're going to fill that time as well?
No, I don't think about it. I don't really think about a schedule when I wake up. I'm just kind of
You just move
clock out,
forward.
and then yeah, and then if I'm going to work, I'm going to work, or whatever I'm doing.
Okay, but you know that, like, when you wake up, you're aware already that it's Tuesday and not Saturday,
Yeah,
and that you have to go to work instead of not have to go to work. Do you
yeah.
ever find yourself driving to work and then realize, it's Saturday, what am I doing?
No.
Okay.
Although I do love that thing where you wake up and you think it's the week and it's actually Saturday, some Saturday morning. I love that.
Okay. How about sleep? How much sleep do you need to get a night to feel good the next day?
So right now I don't get a lot of sleep with the little one, but I suppose ideally, yeah, about yeah, it's close to 8 hours as I could get, but I
You,
haven't had that for a long time.
you never really sleep well with a baby in the bed because you're always afraid you're going to roll over onto it.
Yeah, I don't normally sleep with the baby in the bed. It's normally in the crib there. She's waking up like 3 or 4 times a night at the moment. So, but you can't. It's weird. You just learn how little sleep you can actually survive on.
Yeah.
Kind of.
You learn to find those 30 minutes where the baby's not crying and you're actually falling asleep.
Mm.
You learn to value those much more highly, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I used to find it quite hard to get to sleep at night, but I've since I've had kids, I've no trouble getting off to sleep.
Okay, when you do go to sleep, do you have some sort of sleep hygiene, which is to say, in order to prepare myself to sleep, I I need to. Oh, I can't get into bed until after I've at least washed my feet or something like that. Or do you have any of that kind of thing, or do you just go, okay, that's all I got, so now I just lie down in the bed and just in my clothes and whatever and go to sleep.
Um, yeah, I'm probably closer to that than the other way. So like, I'll obviously brush my teeth and stuff before I go to bed, but yeah, my wife's got like a long routine she goes through. I've not done that.
Baby outside of the equation,
Yeah.
if you were going to sacrifice darkness or quiet, which would you rather sacrifice and still be able to sleep?
To get to sleep? Oh, that's a good question. I would probably, um, I would probably sacrifice the darkness because I really, I do really struggle to get to sleep if there's something noisy outside or whatever.
Okay, so you never
But,
go to sleep while watching media?
oh, that's an interesting point actually because I do sometimes go to sleep listening to a podcast specifically to help me get to sleep. I find like
Is
for
it
some reason.
intentionally picked? Is the one you intentionally picked boring on purpose to help you sleep,
Uh,
or
No, not necessarily boring, but I do know that I'm going to fall asleep because I put the sleep timer on so that it'll turn off after about half an hour, whatever.
when you go to sleep with that happening, do you think it integrates into your dreams?
Um, Not usually, but I have had that before where I've had like an audiobook on or something, and then I've kind of like half woken up, and I'm like, yeah, like the narration is almost like part of the dream, and it's quite strange.
You know what's interesting is I've discovered that I cannot fall asleep if if the thing that's playing in the background isn't in English.
Okay.
So I I fall asleep with the TV on sometimes depending on where I am in my month or whatever. But if it's in Japanese, the fact that I can't understand it while I'm asleep constantly wakes me up. I can't.
That's
It's weird.
that's so weird.
Somehow
Yeah.
an alert goes off. You're sleeping. There's words going on that you can't understand, and that makes me wake up.
Yeah, yeah.
Weird, huh?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I suppose your brain's like desperately trying to reach out and process it or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to make some sense of it. Like that's why when people have an alarm go off, and if they're dreaming, there'll be like an alarm in their dream. A lot of
Yeah,
times,
yeah.
if it doesn't wake them up right away. Okay, so let me ask you some TI questions now, and we'll see how we go, how we deal with those. Uh, if only poets are allowed into this bar, and you and I are both drinking together in this bar, what can we conclude?
We must be poets.
Okay. If some poets go drink in this bar,
Hmm?
and some people who drink in this bar are poets, and we drink in this bar, what can we conclude?
We can't really conclude anything.
Okay. If all cheese is delicious, and only delicious things enter my mouth, can we conclude that what's in my mouth is cheese?
No.
Okay. Can you tell me who my mother's sister's husband's daughter is in relation to me?
Cousin?
Yeah. Okay, cool. How about... All right, well, let me ask you about your awareness of other people's perceptions. So, as somebody who's got children,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you go out in the world and they're not particularly well behaved. To what extent is that a problem for you? Mostly because it makes you look bad in front of other people, or some other reason?
I think I used to care about that more, like when our first kid was little. I think I've learned now that people don't really care that much, or if they do, I'm not that bothered. But
There's
if
some
they,
context they care. Like if you're in a
yeah,
restaurant and
yeah,
your baby's screaming, then people go like, "Okay, take your baby outside."
yeah. So I would definitely, so I definitely care enough that I would do everything I could to stop them making noise or annoying people. So we took a flight with the baby for the first time last week, and I spent the whole flight kind of just changing positions and moving around and all that kind of stuff so that she wouldn't start screaming. Even though people were fine about it anyway, but yeah, I cared enough that I would do that.
It's a little prevent defense, huh?
Yeah,
Okay. And how old is your oldest child?
he's 5.
He comes up to you one day and says, "Daddy, what's important?"
Oh, I would say finding things that mean something to you. So not necessarily things that you have to enjoy all the time, but things that you think are worth doing.
Is school important?
Good question. Yeah, most of school is important.
But you haven't asked me whether it's something I think I should be doing. That doesn't confirm. That doesn't conform with your definition of importance.
You've got me there, son. Uh, yeah, that's a good point. So I guess what I'm saying there is that I think there's some stuff you definitely need to get from school in terms of skills and stuff, but necessarily like passing exams and stuff. It's important if that's kind of connected to something you want to do, but you don't have to do it just because that's the done thing.
So what if he says, "And now tell me what truth is"?
Right, that's a tough one. Well, I suppose you'd have to start by thinking about what truth is, and well, whether truth actually exists, whether you can actually have truth. Um,
If not, I'm going to constantly lie.
okay. Well, I suppose truth then is something that you can verify in some way, whether that's some things you can verify in a sensory way by seeing them or feeling them or whatever, or some things I guess you can verify in a mental way by figuring out what you think is likely, or what you think is I'm looking for the right word, what you think is
True.
so yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid, that word.
Are my feelings true?
It depends what you mean by true. I think there's definitely something real there, because there's sort of sensations that go along with your feelings, and there's kind of like what you then think about them. But I wouldn't necessarily say that feelings are necessarily objectively true.
Dad, I'm just bear with me a couple questions. I'm putting the finishing touches on my paradigm here before I enter school. Okay.
Yeah,
Can you tell me, when I'm going through my school, should I prioritize kindness or fairness when they conflict?
Well, I'd say that's a really difficult one, because I would say I think fairness is important, but sometimes it has to be superseded with kindness.
That's not very helpful.
Well, okay, so I would say kindness of the two.
Okay, all right. So be unfair. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
All right, can you tell me synonyms for the word wrinkled?
Wrinkled.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Haggard, aged, weathered, crumpled, um, creased.
Okay, can you tell me a circumstance in which the very fate of the world is dependent on somebody crumpling? Now, what's a context in which that might be the case?
The fate of the world is dependent on somebody crumpling.
Yes, crumpling.
Okay.
I want it to be believable.
Yeah, it's always believable. Okay, yeah. Say, okay, so there's four people holding up a platform, and that platform has the only plane which is capable of carrying a thermonuclear device. And if that plane is allowed to take off and go to where the thermonuclear device is and be armed with it, it will destroy the entire world. So if one
Wait,
of the
are they
people
holding up this platform with their arms?
yeah, and yeah, so you have to be believable. Yeah. Some crumpling. Okay. Okay, so there is someone carrying a vial with a deadly virus, and they are moving toward a device which can send that virus into the atmosphere, where it's going to reach every country in the world. And if the person makes it to that device, then yeah, the humankind is going to be wiped out. So if they crumple, they're not going to make it. Or did you mean that it has to be specifically? It could only be.
Well, what I came up with while waiting here was simply
Yeah,
that somebody who has to do some critically important job
yeah,
is struggling at the vending machine when the time comes for them to do their job. And the reason they're struggling is because their bill is so crumpled. And so they've tried uncrumpling it and
yeah,
then recrumpling it many times now. Meanwhile, they're the ones who are supposed to say, tell us when to close some big gate of some sort to prevent Myah from getting in. But
yeah.
he's too busy at the vending machine.
Oh, did you say something has to be crumbled? I thought you meant someone has to crumple. So I thought you meant
The
like
word
someone has to
depends.
physically crumple.
It depends on them crumpling. So the thing
Okay,
is,
yeah,
the fate is dependent on the crumpling, but it doesn't mean that the fate necessarily the good option results in more or less crumpling. It's just that
yeah,
some factor of crumpling is critical to the equation.
yeah. I thought it had to be a human being crumpling, literally like crumpling under the pressure of the weight or something.
What's an example of something that both crumbles and crumples?
There's crumbles and crumples.
I don't think there is anything. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
I think those things are exclusive functionalities, right? If something's able
yeah,
to crumble, then it's
yeah,
not able to crumple.
yeah, yeah. Because it has to maintain integrity enough to crumple up before it
Yeah,
crumbles.
yeah. If it were to crumble, it would have to be post crumple.
Yeah.
If you could successfully find something that does both, the crumpling process would have to render it into a crumbly state,
Mm. The
and
closest
not
thing I can think of,
it
the closest
can't.
thing I think of is, there's that sort of safety glass that sort of is designed to crumble pretty much. I would imagine maybe in a crash or something, it would kind of crumple a bit and then crumble.
Okay, well, regardless of crumpling and crumbling, um, can you tell me about being a team player? Are you a team player?
Um, it's some ways, but no, I quite like to have my own independence a lot of the time. So I quite like being a team player if I can kind of be in the background doing stuff that kind of helps the team. But I have stuff like, for example, like if you've got work and you work with other people, and then there's like a social event in the evening, which is meant to kind of build the team spirit. I always kind of really resent those things because I'm like, well, I just want to come to work and then go home, and this is kind of taking up my own time.
Okay, well, what about this scenario? You drive away from some activity like a children's birthday party that you went to with your family, and uh, you are you wanted to leave sooner because you felt you were having your shin was hurting.
Right.
Okay, your shin started hurting for no reason, and, but you were a team player. Your kids were having fun. Your wife was having fun, so you didn't complain about it, and you're not even
Yeah.
going to really mention it because even if you were to mention it on the way home, it would put a little bit of a damper on their good mood. And you're a team player.
Right.
Do you do that? Or do you go,
Um,
my shin hurts, we're leaving?
no, what I'd probably do is kind of halfway in between. I would stay, but I might mention it was hurting on the way home.
Okay, so you'd say, look, I was willing to not mention it until we left, but now I'm going to extract from you the price of a little bit of your good mood.
Yeah. Not for that thought process. I just kind of, I don't know why, but I just find when something like that happens, I just have to kind of blurt it out. I find it weird to sit on it. But I would, yeah. But to your main question, I would definitely be happy to stay there, and if the kids are enjoying it.
And then would you say to yourself, you're a good guy for for ignoring your shin pain?
Uh,
Or you just expect that of yourself as a default?
yeah, in that scenario,
Let's say you walk down the street, you see an empty parking meter, and
yeah,
you realize that the person's time has expired. They're still parked there.
yeah,
And you decide to put a quarter in for them. That it gives them a little more time to park there. Do you tell anybody that you did that?
yeah. I might tell my wife I'd done that, and just say I did a nice thing today, did that. I wouldn't like post about it on social media or tell lots of people about it.
It was an event in your day that had enough impact for you to mention it to your wife. That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Are you likely to be somebody who does random acts of kindness like that?
Yeah, I would do that. It's like parking meters don't work that way in the UK, so you can't do that example. But I would do something similar.
Okay. They don't work like that in the U.S. anymore either. Well, actually, a lot of them still have both. You can still put coins in them, but most of them now take cards. And
Yeah.
while I might put a quarter in to somebody's parking meter because I have it in my pocket and it's expired, and I feel like being a nice guy,
Yeah.
I'm not going to put my ATM card in there to take a quarter out.
Yeah, no, in the UK you get like a paper ticket that you have to put on the car. So the equivalent might be like if you had an hour left on it and you were leaving, you might give it to someone else and say, "Hey, I've got an hour left. You need it or whatever."
Even though you've told me now a couple of times, for some reason I keep defaulting to the belief that you're from Australia. I have was a weird inability to distinguish. Like when I first started talking with you, I was sure your accent was Australian. I'm pretty good with accents too, but Australian and UK, I get them mixed up all the time.
Do you know there's a reason? There's a weird reason for that. And
Okay.
it was basically there's one of the things with accents is you can have a rhotic accent or a non-rhotic accent, and in a rhotic accent you pronounce the R in a word, whereas in a non-rhotic one you don't pronounce the R. So like, and when people left the UK for America, the predominant accent in the UK was a rhotic one, so we pronounced the R. But then then over time it evolved, and the non-rhotic one became the most common accent in the UK. And then people then left for Australia, like like a few hundred years after they left for America. So so Americans find the British and the Australian accent hard to distinguish because they're both non-rhotic.
Which means saying things like, "Really, really, did you do that? Really?"
Yeah. Well, like it's actually in the west of the UK, it's still rhotic, and you would say like farmer, like they pronounce the R in farmer like that, and Americans say like farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you went like to the southeast of England, they say like farmer without the R in it.
Let's say
When
the local agriculturalist.
Yeah, an agriculture. Yeah, it's like when Americans do English accents. I don't know if they know they're doing it, but they're always like really exaggerating, taking the R off. They're always like, "Have you seen my camera?" or something like that.
British people frequently do ask nothing but questions all the time. Like, "Have you seen this? Have you? I'm British. I always ask questions, don't I?" It's like everything British seems like kind of a question.
With the question, like, say everything it's got a question.
We have to go off at the end of our sentences, don't we?
Yeah.
Right? Aye?
Yeah. That's another thing that Australians do as well, even more than British people.
Okay, cool. So, when you use the word literally, you mean it to mean literally. I've noticed that about British people. They don't mean figuratively. So good for you guys. You're not doing that horrible thing that Americans do.
Yeah, although a lot of people do that here. It always makes me laugh when people are like, "I literally pissed myself laughing," and you're like, "Don't mean literally, do you?"
Yeah, it literally took 1 billion years in that line right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see here. Can you talk to me about a character that you've written and nutshell it for me? He's a meow and a meow or whatever. Give me a nutshell, elevator pitch, encapsulation of who that character is.
Okay. A journalist who can't let go of the memory of his dead grandfather.
Okay, so now tell me who he is in archetypes.
Okay. So when you say archetypes, the archetypes I know there's the kind of like the sage, the ruler,
I mean,
the caregiver.
you might call my archetype the iconoclast.
Yeah,
But you don't have to use. There's no formal list of such things. What I'm saying
yeah,
is, when you're talking archetypally, you're linking to some universal thing that
yeah, yeah,
that the character represents an example of.
yeah. So a traditionalist.
Okay. And I'm gonna tell you a plot idea,
Yeah.
and then I want you to pretend to be me, and I'll be a producer that you met in the elevator, and I want you to give me the 5 second synopsis of why you want to make this movie. Okay.
Okay.
And here's the movie concept. There's two young women just out of high school who have an irrational belief that within a couple of months there will be a sudden, massively increased demand for popsicles. And their reasoning for this is based in a lot of particular stuff. Like, in other words, they've been doing a lot of magic rituals to cause a global popsicle fetish to emerge, and they believe these rituals are going to cause this to happen. And they direct all of their lives, all their energies in their young life, 18, 19, 20-year-old or whatever, towards trying to build up as big a storehouse of popsicles as they can in anticipation of this event, which they plan to make a killing. Before you know it, they've managed to mortgage up both of their parents' homes, drained all the life savings, and they've got a warehouse that's filled to the brim with popsicles. Okay? And they have to be frozen, so they have to stay frozen. So they've got big, massive refrigerators in there, like big, massive fans and stuff on. And then there's a power outage on the hottest day of the year. And everyone's like, oh no, it's a power outage. And it persists for 2 days. But the power outage part doesn't reach their warehouse until near the end of the second day, at which point they say, oh, quick, we got to sell all these popsicles. But lucky for them, they've got all of Los Angeles outside clamoring for popsicles because nobody has any air conditioning and it's hot. And they win the day and prove themselves correct. Now, nutshell that for the person in the elevator. Why do they want to invest in this feature film?
Okay. So it's a buddy movie, and it would appeal to anyone who's ever sat around with one of their friends and come up with a crazy uh, business idea. But these people actually do it. But the one thing they can't control is the electricity grid in Los Angeles, and so they have to find new strength in themselves to take advantage of the opportunity that fate's put in their path.
So you're recommending to me a movie about people who take advantage of a blackout to sell popsicles? You didn't even mention the popsicles.
Okay, so do you want like the plot?
Well, I mean, look. If I were gonna nutshell my movie idea home more, I'd say
Yeah.
it's like Sister Act, but with dancing instead of singing and homeless people instead of nuns.
Right.
Can you do that for my popsicle story?
Um, so, so am I trying to think of like an analogous film I could use to sell it?
It's like Thelma and Louise, but
Yeah, yeah,
instead of crime, they have a dream. And instead of jumping off
yeah,
a
yeah,
cliff, they've got popsicles to sell.
yeah,
It's not like Thelma and Louise at all, though.
yeah, yeah. I get it, yeah. It's like that thing where they said Alien was like Jaws in space, right?
Yeah, it's not at all
Mm,
like it. But the thing is, with the example I gave before, that
yeah,
is actually the plot of Homemore. It's basically the plot of Sister Act, but you replace Whoopi Goldberg with a really impassioned ENFP lady
right.
who's determined to save the world by making homeless dance troops. Anyway, okay, that was a hard one to come up with an analogous one though. For now, can you tell me a plot, but first have in mind an analog, and I'll try to guess it.
Okay. Yeah,
So I guess this means like start with pick a movie, and then
yeah,
replace two elements, and then describe it without telling me that, and then I'll see if I can guess what it is.
yeah. I get it. Okay, cool. Um, Suddenly, I feel like I've never seen a movie in my life. Trying to think of what it is. Um, uh, okay, so there's this clown who has been a circus clown for a number of years, but has never had any great success. And uh, but one day, there's a clown Olympics, um, and the kind of the the headline event in the Clown Olympics is a 100 meters race in one of those little tiny clown cars. And the world's most famous clown, who is called Bobby the Clown, um, picks our hero, who's called Steve the Clown, as his opponent in this 100 meters race, um, just because he likes the name of Steve the Clown, and he thinks that will kind of bring the crowds in. And they have the race, and against all odds, Steve the Clown wins.
Okay, so it's Rocky,
Yeah,
but with
yeah,
clown racing and clowns instead of boxers and boxing.
yeah.
Okay, cool. It took me that long to figure out the answer, actually. So I wasn't waiting for you to finish to tell you the answer. It took me that long to figure it out. I
Okay.
was originally thinking, okay, is this like, because there's this one movie called The Rookie, where the
Mm,
old guy who was a minor leaguer for a while and never did anything in baseball revisits the issue of whether he should be a baseball pitcher at like age 37 or whatever, and
mm.
discovers that the earlier issues with his arm have all repaired themselves over the years, and now he can throw super fast. So I was initially thinking maybe it was that, but now when you added in the detail that um, they just kind of liked his name, and there was no real reason to even pick him as an opponent for such a good guy, right? That's
Yeah,
when I was cued into the fact that you're talking about Rocky.
yeah,
And actually, my first thought was Rocky 2.
yeah, yeah. Because it was a draw. I can't remember. I can't remember which one was a draw.
Well, the reason I thought that is because I was thinking, since Rocky's the main character, he can't be that underdog guy, really. But then I remembered the actual plot of Rocky, and no, in the first Rocky, he was the main. He wasn't. I got it backwards. I assumed that the first Rocky, he must be the main character and therefore the big famous
Yeah,
guy,
yeah,
you know. And so I thought Rocky 2, and no, that's not true. I recall the plot of Rocky a little better now. That's a good
yeah.
one. That's a good example. Okay, cool. So I think I know what you are,
Okay.
but I'm going to give you what I believe you are, and then what it's possible you are, and then ask you to help me determine which of those two things it is.
Oh,
I believe you are an ESTP, but it's possible you're an ISFJ.
ESTP.
The thing is, you either have more SI than I'd expect from an ESTP, or more TI than or quicker TI than I'd expect, quicker and more accurate TI than I'd expect from an ISFJ. And
Okay.
you don't test TE polar, but I didn't really test the TE much.
Okay.
So let me get your thoughts now before we resolve that further.
So, to me, both of those are kind of interesting. It's kind of surprising because I've never thought of myself being an extrovert, which is why the ESTP would be unusual. But ISFJ feels even stranger to me because I feel like that's FE in your second slot, isn't it?
Right.
Which I would never picture myself having FE that high.
Well, also, you and I have done a couple of times during our conversation something that always happens when I'm talking with ESTPs, which is we start talking, we stop. We start talking, we stop at the same time,
Okay.
like a couple times in a row. We're like, conversationally, we do that thing when people are walking and they both move to this side, then they both move to this side
Yeah.
to get out of each other's way. So that is consistent with ESTP. But go ahead.
Yeah. But ESTP would have extrovert sensing
Yeah.
second, right?
First.
So that
First, not second.
first. So that was surprising to me, based on both on obviously the stereotype of extrovert sensing is like being really good with your hands and like kind of really in the moment, which I don't feel like is me. But also I've heard you talk a lot about being kind of it's knowing what you want and being kind of action.
It's just a frame of concrete impacts versus ideational impacts. So,
Yeah.
If you do make if you were to make a YouTube channel, you'd be you wouldn't ever be okay with what I'm okay with, which is making endless numbers of videos and not caring about how that diminishes the capacity of any individual one to have impact, and or not care that you're not the impacts of what you're doing don't contribute enough to where you're going. They're not meaningful. They're not real. The only impacts are you got those people say they like you, but you didn't make any money. Those kind of impacts aren't satisfying, really, ultimately for you. You need something more concrete. So that's what SE ultimately is. SE is the opportunistic half of opportunism and timing. It plays out in terms of if you have it as an absolute value in the first slot, it means that you're not going to self-identify as somebody who's especially good at task completion. But the reality of it is, it may be difficult. Okay, so here's something about ESTPs. It may be hard. Let's say you go out and party with them one night, and you're both drunk, and you're at the guy's house, and you're at the ESTP's house, and you go, I got to get my car home because I got to leave for work in the morning, but I'm too drunk to drive. And you get the ESTP to agree to this, that if you take a lift home, then he'll drive your car over in the morning, you can drive him back, even though the morning's only 4 hours away. If you get the ESTP to agree to that, there's zero chance they won't follow through on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not necessarily easy to get them to agree to that, because SE in the dominant slot is more opportunistic in its framing. It doesn't want to lock down what it's going to do later. And that's also why I'm thinking I went with ESTP over ISFJ, is that you display that quality when I asked you about your scheduling of the day and stuff. You also display what I would consider to be unconscious SI in that regard. It doesn't sound to me like you do what SI people do, which is when you wake up, you kind of review ahead of you what you have during the day, and you repeatedly go over it throughout the day, repeating the same things until that time has passed. So for days now, I've been reminding myself, consciously and willfully with words in my head, that I've got a typing on Saturday morning, since whenever it was you sent me the email telling me the time. Even if that was before I actually entered it into the calendar and sent you an invite, I've been thinking about the fact that I've got that thing to deal with since I determined that I do have that thing to deal with. It's a dumb way to keep track of things, to just repeat it to yourself over and over again, but I can't delegate something to my calendar and forget about it. If it happens, it's a failure of SI, even though I don't need to remember it to attend to the meeting.
So for me, for example, on the other side, so I knew that I had this typing session all day today, but I guess for me, sorry. Sorry, that was just my son. Yeah, but so I've been aware of having it all day, but obviously this is like an unusual thing for me to do.
What's this question? Daddy, what is truth?
Yes, yeah, that was it. And I told him that we've established that I don't know. Okay, yeah, so ISFJ.
Because look, here's what I have to explain. I have to explain somebody who's very good at introverted thinking questions, who's also the part of extroverted thinking that I can test. You test very well and very strong on it. Also somebody who is capable ideationally of demonstrating the subject form of NE whenever it's pushed on, but it's not like an NE DOM, because it's instrumental for you. You don't inherently value things that go in wild different directions. You aren't always inherently trying to make a joke. So, so it's 8th slot, and I have to explain somebody who's also not TE polar, and somebody who can do autobiographical recall in great detail. There's only one type that fits all those bills, and that's ESTP.
Because I from just typing myself, which I was never really sure, I got to INTP, which was, but that was kind of before I started watching all your stuff, and I'm not sure I kind of fully understood what the functions really were. But I could kind of see the TI in myself, because I'm constantly sort of passing out arguments in my head all the time. And then I wondered if that gave me like FE in the 4th slot. That made sense. The reason I'd never thought about SE was I'd never really thought of myself as being that practical. Like, for example, I actually don't drive, because I live in a city where I've never had to learn to drive. Now, I will learn to drive at some point, but like stuff like that with the stereotype of SE, you always have the idea of like kind of really practical people who are kind of like always
Practicality is
in the
much
moment.
more linked to TE and SI than it is to SE. SE,
Yeah,
like extroverted intuition, is an action function. So being an action
yeah,
type is inherently impractical because it
yeah,
means you're prepared in any given moment to take action. But practicality means really that you're you're implementing your planned action that you pre-prepared. If you're really
mm,
prepared to take action in the moment, like if somebody tries to pull some bullshit on me out in the world and with words, it doesn't. I don't need to be prepared for it ahead
yeah,
of time. I'm ready to crush them right there in an instant. And the same thing is true for extroverted sensing. If you note an opportunity that's of great value for some reason, and you'll also recognize then that you've got to get it right now because it's going to be snapped up by somebody else pretty quickly, then
mm,
you'll end up diverting from what you're doing to do that real quick. Whereas
mm,
I go, boy, what a great deal. I should really snap that up as I drive past it. And then discuss later for the next few days how, you see how my decision not to get that thing is representative of these things? And that's why I'm living in this sea of regret that I didn't grab that when I could have. But most
yep,
importantly, it's okay that I didn't because it enables this explanation.
mm. So because I do I do think I overthink decisions quite often, and kind of dither between things.
Okay, well, I think that the key thing to note about extroverted sensing is it doesn't dither when it has NI clarity. In other
Right.
words, if it's not clear whether that's such a good deal that you should deviate from what you're doing right now and go obtain that, then
Mm,
it's left in a state of ambiguity because perceivers are generally more comfortable with leaving things ambiguous, I guess you could say.
mm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it has to actually be worth it. Being an SE person, if you're an SE Dom, that means you've got a good understanding of how much force is used to create how much impact, whether that's physical force or metaphysical force, and how those impacts are likely to reverberate or be diminishing returns.
Yeah. 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 I mean, so recently I was wanting to change my career, and I really just didn't know what I wanted to change it to, and I still haven't figured it out. But I have a sense that once I know what it is, I'll have no trouble doing it. It's just that until I know it, I find it really difficult to do anything.
Yeah, and that's something ESTPs and ENTPs share is we don't have especially robust conscious relationships with our NI. Yours is conscious, but fourth slot. Mine's fifth slot, but unconscious. And for me, it plays out like I have to make a decision between X and Y, and neither is a good choice. Then I am really flummoxed, or neither is what I really want. But I have no idea how to check what I really want exactly.
Mm,
So if you're an ESTP, it means you also don't know what you want.
mm.
Do you know what you want?
A lot of the time, no. That's why you're talking about not having a plan for the future.
Hmm.
That is kind of why. So like when I was a little, when you're a kid and people ask you like, what do you want to be when you grow up, as if you know, and some people did know, and I never did.
Right. It was fairly easy to get past my initial intuitive hint of maybe he's an ESTJ. It was pretty easy to get past that because you don't talk like you value TE as a frame.
Mm,
Making everything into a problem for you to solve is not your MO.
mm. Although, sometimes for work, that's what I need to do. I need to solve. I mean, my
No,
job is kind
yeah,
of problem solving.
I don't doubt that you spend all day using TE. Okay,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
I worked at jobs and stuff, I spent. That's why they hired me. It was because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was very good at demonstrating TE. But the
Yeah.
thing is, it's countervalued. We provide it when our TI isn't good enough,
Mm.
and we have to render it into something useful.
Yeah.
Work demands that of us. When we get home, we don't want to spend time solving open-ended problems. The
Mm.
problem with TE is when you get up to solve something, it's very difficult to know whether it's going to be a quick fix or it's going to be this torturous long ordeal until you've done enough work that's no longer even a quick fix.
Mm.
So it's just like, I don't even know if I want to try to begin solving this thing because I don't know how long it's going to take.
Mm.
I think that's implicit in both the ENTP and ESTP's dislike of TE as a frame, while also being competent at it from other people's perspectives.
Mm. Yeah, because I mean that was part of the reason why I wanted to do the typing because I had the basic understanding of the functions, but from watching some of your sessions, I actually suddenly was like, well, I actually don't know if I use TI or TE, and like SI, I always felt like I found the SI bits quite easy, so I did wonder about ISTJ. Like I said, I'd never thought of ISFJ because I just never felt I had FE high up.
You do. It's just selfish. Your T is above F. It's selfish third slot. You want to be recognized for being cool and stuff. You don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time slathering on praise to other people's buttered bread, you know?
Mm.
But also what I want to say is the reason you're not an INTP is because
Yeah,
of the quality of your extroverted intuition. It's autopilot.
yeah,
It provided you sufficient deviation from the original story to fulfill the requirements of the question,
yeah,
the test, but it wasn't. You didn't have fun creating something that goes with Rocky. Like, there's no
yeah.
way I would have done if I were going to choose Rocky. I would think, okay, well, how do you make this fun? It's got to be like something like this is called Secretariat, the other side of the story. Okay, and in this story, Secretariat, at the height of his career, races against a mule from the local kitty animal petting park, and with the mule comes this very exotic guy from the Orient who's constantly whispering in the mule's ears. It turns out that he's an inspirational speaker, and he inspires the mule to such great heights that he beats Secretariat in this race. Now, then you've got the element of the trainer, the
Yeah.
the boxing trainer in the story too.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It's yeah. Sorry.
so
So
anyway,
so if I
this
yeah,
that thing that we just did, that is
yeah,
also something that happens way more than ever happens in any other context with ESTPs.
interesting. So my polar function would be FI then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And how would that manifest itself?
Well, basically, you're a baby about it. So how you feel makes a huge difference when you feel something. And most of the time, as long as it's not a big, strong feeling, then you don't notice it you don't pay any attention to it because it's not relevant to any of the ways you express your being. You express your being by creating impacts, by being correct, by being recognized for how correct and effective you are, and ideally also being thought of as at least sort of warm. And then lastly, by your fourth function, which is you'd like for the universe to provide you more moments where it gives you enough of the clues that you have NI clarity. Here's the totality of what should be done, and here's
Mm.
when I should do it. But the universe
Yeah.
doesn't provide you a lot of clarity like that, because to provide you that much clarity about what you know to be the world, what you know about the world, you'd have to be prioritizing receiving rather than passing. You're a quarterback. I'm a quarterback. Our respective quadra introverted knowing types. My quadra has ISFJ. Yours has INFJ. They are designed to receive information of that sort. So they're going to know very well, but be not typically acting. They wish they could act a little bit more on what they know. You're going to be like, I wish I had more clarity about things more frequently so that I could act definitively about them. And I'm going to say, I wish I could take care of myself so I could play all the time. Like I wish body time didn't exist. We both don't really want body time to exist because
Right.
we're busy doing shit. I'm busy talking. I'm live sharing now. I don't want to have to get a thing of water. I'm busy.
So, like I was saying, I've always kind of been identified as an introvert by people because I was always quite shy and sort of like to spend time on my own and stuff. When it comes to functions, is it not necessarily that you would be what would be described as an extrovert if you have an extrovert function at the top? You could be someone who likes spending time on their own but happens to use that function.
Right, because that's the backwards way of dealing with it. A personality type is the aspects of a self that remain the same throughout one's life and are unchanging, namely their attentional habits. Whereas descriptive things you can say about a person are particular expressions of those attentional configurations. Different ESTPs you're not going to get all the ESTPs together and say, look, they all do this kind of job, or they all have this kind of affect displayed to other people, or they all meh, because each of them has a distinct and unique set of particulars through which their attentional manners process. The reason you can't be an ISTP is because you're not extroverted intuition polar. You have way better extroverted intuition than polar, but the reason you can't be an INTP is because your extroverted intuition is not first or second. Yeah. It's instrumental, maybe like second, but it's not as it doesn't cost you the ability to do things in terms of actual impacts, which is what the INTPs pay for their ability to ideate and be logical with ideation as an operational value, is they lose the ability to do things. They don't do anything.
Yeah.
You've got a family and a job and stuff.
Right. Yeah, because I remember watching one of your INTP videos and you were talking about like failure to launch syndrome, and like I kind of identified with that because there was so much stuff that I would like to have done but haven't done. But I guess that's probably pretty true for everyone.
I mean, what you're saying is you have failure to launch even more than you have syndrome, right. Which is not a real syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And just on the IS, so would you lean strongly towards ESTP then?
Yeah, because
versus ISFJ?
It's absolutely most consistent. The only reason I was thinking ISFJ is because of that introverted affect of yours. But yeah. You can't trust affect, and all ESTPs and ENTPs tend to come across to me in these typing sessions as more introverted than they actually are, because our operational value is an introverted function, TI. So when we're engaging something that requires our full attention, so to speak, we shift into question asking mode. But in this context, I'm asking you the questions. So it makes you display even more introverted to me than perhaps you would to others. But regardless, when the world's pushing on you, your first place to go is your operational value, which is, for us, TI, which is determine whether something's correct or logical. But the actual process of engagement of TI is to ask questions to get more clarity about what the other person's saying, so you can say, no, okay, here's why it's bullshit. So there's, depending on depending on where you get your FE payoff is going to be determining more how extroverted your affect is. If you find ways to get FE payout, that's to say other people informing you or making clear to you that they like you a lot or impressed by you and or think you're excellent in a standout way at something or whatever, then if you get that more successfully by being less talkative, then you'll probably take that approach, because the goal is to get the FE payout, not to use a lot of subject kind of FE.
Yeah. It's funny, because I was coming in, I really thought I was introvert, and I was thinking the only introverted type or the only two introverted types I'd be really surprised at would be ISFJ and INFJ, just because of that high FE, which was the one that I was fairly sure I didn't have in the top two.
Well, your TE is too good for INFJ. TE polar and INFJs looks very different than how you mowed the lawn.
Yeah, that was the other thing was, I thought I don't think I'm TE.
Okay, so first what you need to do is determine if you have a lawn, and then you'd want to look at it and see how long the grass was, and then you'd want to see if you know whether you have a vacuum cleaner, a lawnmower. It's like, that's not what you did at all, so.
Yeah. Although I have seen you ask TE questions before, and I think the first time I saw it, you were like, how many steps you need to smoke a cigarette. And I think I had, like, because you were saying there was 4, which was like basically get a cigarette, smoke a cigarette, put it out and throw it away or whatever. And I think I had like open the packet, take the cigarette out, light the cigarette. So the first time I did a TE question, I did add probably more steps into it.
Okay, but see, there's still sensible steps. The thing that happens with knowers with TE polar is they don't get the idea that it's really possible to break things into steps, because anything that you might break into steps, you could, in theory, break into infinite steps.
Yeah.
You know, how do you light a cigarette? First, I get my lighter, then I move my finger this little bit, then I move it a little bit more, you could break it into infinite steps, but TE understands it's the process of rendering the infinite steps of fluid reality into distinct events that you can understand ordinally. Only some things can be understood ordinally too. Like, how to be cool is a non-ordinal question. How to take a shower is an ordinal question. It matters whether you take off your clothes before or after you get into the shower. Whereas if you're telling people how to be cool involves wear sunglasses and get a cool and also be friendly, and also, it doesn't matter. They don't have order of operations there. So the bottom line is you conceptually get order of operations stuff and how it's distinct from not order of operations stuff, whereas TE polar doesn't conceptually get that, and that's why they're able to reveal. That's why they reveal that lack of ability to ordinate.
Yeah. Interesting. No, really interesting, because I know obviously all like the type descriptions and stuff are not really worth bothering with, but obviously like the ESTP ones are always like, you spend your free time hunting or whatever, they're always kind of like. So I've never considered that one, but I need to kind of look more into it.
It's just a big conspiracy. A bunch of people got together and said, we want to cause Eric to have to deal with this problem, so let's all write a bunch of bullshit type descriptions. And you know what? Yeah. Someone with good TE put that together because it works.
Yeah, true.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to stop this recording now, and do you want me to share it with you privately, or are you comfortable with me publishing?
Do you want to publish it?
I would like to, sure, yeah.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Go for
it. It'll be up within an hour. Up and published within an hour.
Right.
All right, thanks.
Cool.
Bye.